On the inside of the track, he's getting challenged, but he will hold on.
Of white athletes to break the 10-second barrier in the 100.
The clock read 9.89, and for a moment, the small crowd at the Music City Track Carnival in Cleveland, Tennessee just stared at it. Not because nobody had ever run that time before, plenty of professional sprinters have. But because the name next to it belonged to a guy who, 2 years earlier, couldn't get a single Division I program in the country to call him back. That number, 9.89, is the exact time Noah Lyles ran to win bronze at the 2025 World Championships in Tokyo.
At Hayward, last year ran 10:33 and come out of this going 10:17. Just regular races. Okay. So come out here and run 10:17. Great improvement for only like my second big.
8-time world champion. Olympic gold medalist. The most dominant sprinter of his generation. And a kid named Sam Blaskowski had just matched it, on a Friday night, at a meet most casual fans had never heard of. To understand how something like that happens, you have to rewind. Not just a season. Not just to college. You have to go back to a regular town in Wisconsin, and a recruiting system that's supposed to have one job: find the fastest kids in the country, and how it managed to walk right past one standing in plain sight. Oshkosh doesn't make sprinters. That's not a knock on the place. It's just not how the geography of American track and field works. The pipeline that produces elite sprinters tends to run through specific regions, specific high school programs, specific club systems that feed directly into Division I powerhouses. Oshkosh, Wisconsin isn't on that map. It's a football and basketball town, the kind of place where track exists as a spring activity for kids who play other sports the rest of the year.
I'm Blaskowski, and I recently graduated from Oshkosh West High School. I've been coming to the YMCA since I was a little baby, from swimming, playing basketball, flag football, being on the swim team, Oshie, since I was little. And then as I got older and became more into that middle school, high school.
Sam Blaskowski was exactly that kind of kid. Flag football. Indoor soccer. Competitive swimming. Basketball, until he got cut from the team, and that's genuinely where this story starts. Not with a coach spotting raw talent in a hallway. Not with a childhood obsession with the Olympics. With a roster cut, and a kid looking for something to do that winter. He picked track almost by accident. And track did something nobody, not him, not his coaches, not anyone watching, fully expected. The numbers started adding up fast. By his senior year, Blaskowski was running 10.83 in the 100 meters and 21.99 in the 200. He won the Wisconsin State Championship in both events, and added a long jump title on top of that. 3 state championships, 1 season, 1 athlete. In most sports, that's the kind of resume that generates a stack of letters from college coaches. Football, basketball, baseball, 3 state titles in a single year would have recruiters flying in. Track recruiting works differently, and not always for the better. Programs are often working from times posted at major invitational meets, from athletes already plugged into well-known club systems, from regions they've scouted for years. A kid running historic times at a small-town Wisconsin state meet can be genuinely excellent and still be functionally invisible to the programs that matter. One coach called Nicholas Gordon, the long jump coach at the University of Wisconsin Lacrosse, a Division III program, the level where athletic scholarships don't exist by NCAA rule, full stop. It happened to be the school both of Blaskowski's parents had attended. It happened to be about a mile from where his grandparents lived. 3 state titles. 1 door, and it didn't come with $1 attached.
Fresh off of a big 100-meter performance this weekend. I mean, you've had what is it, like 24, 48 hours now to process things, Sam? Like, what's it been like, I guess, kind of going viral, and then
It's kind of like I just had my hands on my head, just like I don't know how I just skipped 9.9s and went to 9.8, because like to me that's like 9.8 is like legit.
Division III isn't the bottom. It's just a different universe. Here's where the story gets complicated, because what happened next at Lacrosse genuinely looks like dominance from every angle, and it kind of was. Blaskowski won the D3 national title in the 100 meters as a freshman. Then he won it again. And again. And again, 4 consecutive national championships in the 100, 3 more in the 60-meter indoor event, 3 more in the 200. 11 individual national titles by the time he graduated. By any reasonable measure, that's one of the most decorated D3 sprint careers in recent memory. And almost nobody outside of Division III noticed, because of how the math actually works. A D3 national champion in the 100 meters typically runs somewhere in the range of 10.2 to 10.4 seconds. That is, by any normal human standard, extremely fast, faster than the vast majority of people who have ever attempted to sprint will ever run, even with years of dedicated training. But the gap between that time and what it takes to make a Diamond League final, or an Olympic team, or a World Championship podium, isn't a small step up. It's a different tier of the sport entirely. Athletes who win Olympic medals are running consistently under 9.9. The distance between 10.2 and 9.89 sounds tiny on paper, 0.3 of a second, but in sprinting, that gap separates very good college athlete from among the fastest humans alive. So Blaskowski graduated with 11 national titles and an open question that nobody, not him, not his coaches, not anyone watching from outside, could actually answer. Was this a guy who'd been held back purely by circumstance, who'd run into a system that simply never looked at him? Or was he the fastest fish in a pond that, no matter how dominant he was within it, just wasn't deep enough to translate? The Olympic trials were the first real data point.
In the world of sprinting, there have only ever been a handful of white athletes to break the 10-second barrier in the 100.
In 2024, Blaskowski lined up at the U.S. Olympic trials, the single most competitive 100-meter field in the country, where every sprinter with any realistic shot at making the Olympic team shows up. These are athletes who've spent years inside elite programs, with full-time coaching staffs, sponsorship deals, training partners who are themselves Olympic medalists. It's not an exaggeration to say the trials field is, on a given day, one of the deepest sprint fields on the planet. He didn't make the team. That part isn't a surprise, making an Olympic team out of nowhere essentially never happens. But he wasn't out of place either. He held his own against athletes who'd been groomed for this moment their entire careers. And for the first time, people who actually follow the sport at a serious level, not just D3 results pages, started paying attention to the name Sam Blaskowski. Then came the decision that explains everything else. 11 national titles and a respectable trials showing don't come with a professional contract attached. If Blaskowski wanted an actual answer to the question that had followed him through college, was he elite, or wasn't he needed to be training somewhere that could actually produce that answer. That meant Florida. Specifically, it meant Star Athletics, the training group built by Dennis Mitchell, a coach with one of the strongest reputations in American sprinting, the man who guided Sha'Carri Richardson to a world championship title. Mitchell's group includes Kenny Bednarik, who finished 4th in the 100 meters at the 2025 World Championships. This isn't just a good training group. This is one of the rooms where, if you genuinely belong at the elite level, it tends to show up in practice within weeks.
And they're off here in our
Blaskowski got in lane 4, just limbs. On the track, he's getting challenged, but he will hold off all challengers.
The problem was that Blaskowski had none of the things that usually get an athlete into a room like that. No agent. No sponsor. No income from a sport that, at his level, had never paid him $1. So he took a job at a small regional airport in Wisconsin. He worked through the entire off-season, the months most serious athletes spend resting, recovering, or training full-time, saving everything he could. Then he packed up and moved to Florida, on his own money, with no guarantee that any of it would lead anywhere. Sit with that for a second. 4 years of dominating a level of the sport most people never watch. Then, instead of using that achievement to coast into a comfortable post-college life, working an airport job specifically so he could afford to find out whether he was good enough, with the very real possibility that the answer would be no, and he'd have spent his savings and his off-season finding that out the hard way. He got there, and something happened almost immediately. Training alongside athletes who'd competed at Olympic and World Championship level is supposed to be humbling for someone coming from D3. For a lot of athletes making that jump, it's where the gap finally becomes visible, where you realize just how far away world class actually is. That's not what Mitchell saw. Within weeks, according to people around the group, it was clear this kid wasn't behind. he belonged in the sessions. The training group dynamic Richardson, Bednarik, and now Blaskowski started to look less like elite athletes plus a development project and more like a group where everyone was pushing everyone.
Running a 9.94, we also saw Cole Beck running a 9.97, we saw Lachlan Kennedy running a 9.96, we saw Matthew Bowling drop a 9.98, and we also saw Filippo Tortu from Italy running a 9.99. And then,
there's a broader thread running through all of this that's worth pulling on, because it ties directly back to one of the loudest voices in the sport. Noah Lyles has spent years, in interviews, on social media, repeatedly talking about how track and field needs to reach beyond its traditional pipelines. New fans, new regions, new types of athletes who don't fit the profile that usually gets recruited. His argument has always been the same: speed doesn't check where you went to school, or whether you had a scholarship, before deciding who gets to be elite. Blaskowski's story, at this exact point, training in the same orbit as Olympic medalists, funded by an airport paycheck, with a resume that no Division I program had wanted, is close to a perfect illustration of exactly the argument Lyles has been making. But belonging in practice and proving it on the clock are two different things, and 2026 didn't start well. Heading into the season, Blaskowski's personal best sat at 10.05 seconds. Fast, genuinely, seriously fast, but still on the wrong side of the line that separates very good from world class. He raced 5 times early in the year. 3 of those races were at altitude, where thinner air typically helps sprinters run slightly faster times than they would at sea level. It's part of why so many records have historically been set at high-altitude venues. Even with that advantage working in his favor, he didn't break 10 seconds once. He didn't finish higher than third in any of the 5. This is the part of the story where, if you were watching from the outside, you'd start writing the ending. A guy who walked away from a stable life, worked an airport job, moved across the country chasing a dream only to spend the start of the season confirming exactly what the original recruiters had decided years earlier. The ceiling was real. The bet didn't pay off. And then, on May 30th, 2026, it did. The race. Cleveland, Tennessee. The Music City Track Carnival, not a Diamond League meet, not a major championship, just a regular season race on the American circuit. Blaskowski lined up in the 100 meters. He ran 9.89. Not a gradual chip away at his personal best, not 10.03, then 9.98, then slowly working down towards sub-10. He went straight from 10.05 to 9.89 in a single race, skipping the entire 9.90 to 9.99 range that most sprinters spend years grinding through incrementally. That made him the fastest American in the country for the 2026 season, and tied for second fastest in the world for the entire year up to that point. Now put that number next to Tokyo, 2025, one of the deepest 100-meter finals in years. Seville won gold in 9.77. Kishane Thompson took silver in 9.82. Noah Lyles ran 9.89 for bronze. The same 9.89. Run by a guy who, 2 years earlier, had 11 D3 national titles and 0 Division I interest. It's also worth saying, because it adds real context rather than hype, that breakthroughs like this aren't unheard of in sprinting, even if they're rare. Christophe Lemaitre became the first sprinter of European descent to break 10 seconds in the 100 meters back in 2010, and went on to run multiple times under 9.95 over his career. Subing Tian became the first Asian-born sprinter to break 9.9 and reach an Olympic 100-meter final, running 9.83 at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. These moments tend to happen suddenly, often later in an athlete's career than expected, and they tend to come from athletes who spent years being underestimated by exactly the kind of system Blaskowski had to fight his way around. His jump from 10.05 to 9.89 fits that pattern almost perfectly, not a freak accident, but the kind of leap that happens when an athlete who's been quietly developing finally puts it all together in one race. Dennis Mitchell, for his part, wasn't surprised. According to him, the training had been pointing toward exactly this for a while. It was a matter of when, not if. Afterward, Blaskowski posted something short. He wrote that breaking 10 seconds had stopped being just a goal at some point and become something closer to an obsession, and that the work, the discipline, and the belief had all converged in that one race. It's worth sitting with what the work actually represents in his specific case, because it's not abstract. 4 years spent dominating a level of the sport that almost nobody watches. An entire offseason spent in an airport uniform instead of training full-time or resting. A move away from family, away from the grandparents who lived a mile from his old college campus, to a state he'd never lived in, funded entirely by his own labor, with no guarantee any of it would matter. And now, somewhere out there, every recruiter who scrolled past his name in high school is looking at a 9.89 next to it. Los Angeles, 2028. 2 years out. Blaskowski will be 25, squarely in the window where sprinters tend to hit their physical peak. A home Olympics, on American soil, in front of a crowd that has historically embraced exactly this kind of story more than almost any other audience in the world. But it's worth being honest about what's actually between here and there. Making the US Olympic team in the 100 meters doesn't just mean running a fast time, it means beating other Americans at the trials, in a country that, by 2028, will likely still have Noah Lyles, Kenny Bednarik, and a new generation of sprinters all in the mix. A 9.89 makes Blaskowski a genuine contender. It doesn't make a roster spot automatic, which might be the most fitting part of this whole story. The system spent years deciding this guy didn't belong at the highest level. What happens next isn't going to be decided by recruiters, or scholarship offers, or anyone's prior assumptions about where talent comes from. It's going to be decided on a track, the same way it always should have been, and in 2028, it'll happen in front of 80,000 people who'll know exactly how he got there.